Case number 8847. David Moreno, $5,000 in accumulated parking fines. The defendant stood at the podium in Providence Municipal Court, Rhode Island, hands gripping the edge. Judge Caprio looked up from the paperwork. "Mr. Moreno, this is quite a lot. What happened here?" The man's voice barely held. "Your Honor, He stopped, swallowed hard. "My wife was in hospice, stage 4 pancreatic cancer. I was with her every day for 7 months." His hand started shaking. "I didn't even know the tickets were piling up. I parked wherever I could near the hospital. I couldn't leave her." The courtroom went completely silent. Judge Caprio removed his glasses slowly, leaned forward. "Mr. Moreno," he said quietly, "I'm very sorry for your loss. Let me ask you something." The clerk had called the case moments earlier with routine efficiency, but now the weight of those words, $5,000, settled over the courtroom like an unexpected chill. David Moreno stood at the defendant's podium, a man in his early 40s wearing a slightly wrinkled button-down shirt, the kind someone puts on carefully when they know they're going to court, but don't quite have the energy to make it perfect. His hands rested on the wooden podium edge, knuckles pale from gripping too hard. Judge Caprio shuffled through the thick stack of parking violations, each one a separate ticket, each one dated, each one representing a moment in someone's life. 37 tickets. He'd seen plenty of parking cases. This was Providence Municipal Court after all. But this volume, this accumulation, told a story before anyone said a word. "All right, Mr. Moreno," the judge began, his tone measured. "Help me understand this. These tickets span from February to September of last year. That's 7 months of violations. What was happening during that time?" David took a breath that seemed to catch in his chest. "Your Honor, they're all from the same area, the hospital district near St. Joseph's. Were you visiting someone there?" A pause. The kind of pause that fills a room. "My wife, Your Honor, she was a patient there." Judge Caprio's expression shifted, the bureaucratic mask giving way to something more human. "I see. For how long?" 7 months, David said quietly. "All 7 months." The judge set the stack of tickets down carefully, as if they'd suddenly become fragile. "That's a long time to be in a hospital, Mr. Moreno." "Yes, sir." "What was her condition, if you don't mind me asking?" David's jaw worked for a moment before he could answer. "Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. They diagnosed her in January. By February, she was admitted for hospice care. I was there every day, sometimes twice a day, morning and evening." The courtroom clerk, a middle-aged woman who'd seen hundreds of cases pass through, looked down at her papers. Somewhere in the gallery, someone shifted in their seat, the sound amplified in the sudden quiet. "And these tickets," Judge Caprio said, tapping the stack, "they all came during those months?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Tell me about the parking situation at St. Joseph's." David's shoulders loosened slightly, as if grateful for a concrete question he could answer. "The patient lot was always full. The visitor lot, there is one, but it's $15 a day. I was already dealing with—" He stopped, regrouped. "I parked on the street. There's meters there. 2-hour limits, street cleaning days. I tried to move the car when I could, but sometimes you lost track of time." "Yes, sir, exactly. I'd be sitting with her, and hours would pass, and I wouldn't even realize." Judge Caprio nodded slowly. In courtrooms like this, small fines often hide big struggles. This was becoming one of those cases. The judge picked up the top ticket from the stack, examined the date. "February 14th, Valentine's Day." He looked up at David. "This was the first one?" "I think so, yes." "And the last one?" He flipped through to the bottom of the pile. "September 20th. He set the tickets down again, more deliberately this time. "Mr. Moreno, what happened on September 20th? These tickets stopped completely after that date." The defendant's hands tightened on the podium again. His voice, when it came, was barely above a whisper. "She passed away, Your Honor. September 18th. The last ticket is from 2 days later. That was probably the last time I went to the hospital to handle her belongings, paperwork, that sort of thing." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was the kind of silence that happens when people need a moment to absorb something that matters. Judge Caprio removed his reading glasses, rubbed the bridge of his nose. The court officer standing by the side door looked away toward the window. "I'm very sorry for your loss," the judge said finally. "Thank you, Your Honor. How are you doing now?" David let out a small, mirthless laugh. "I'm here about parking tickets, so, you know, could be better." Despite everything, there was a flicker of wry humor in that response, and Judge Caprio caught it. "Yeah, $5,000 in parking tickets will do that to a person. But I mean more broadly, how are you managing?" "One day at a time, sir." "Let me ask you something practical," the judge continued. "What do you do for a living?" "I'm a construction worker, or I was. I'm currently unemployed." "When did you stop working?" "I used my FMLA when she first got admitted. Family medical leave. That covered about 3 months. After that," David's voice trailed off. "I just couldn't go back yet. My foreman was understanding, but he had a job to run. He couldn't hold my position indefinitely." "So you haven't been working since?" "Since July. Almost 6 months now." Judge Caprio made a note on his pad, his pen moving slowly across the paper. "And you're looking for work now?" "Yes, sir. It's tough. Construction slows down in winter anyway. But I'm trying. I've got applications out." "Do you have family? Anyone helping you through this?" "I'm staying with my sister right now. She's been amazing. Let me and my kids move in after everything." The judge looked up sharply. "You have children?" "Two, a boy and a girl, 8 and 11. Something in Judge Caprio's face changed again. Another layer of understanding settling into place. This wasn't just a widower dealing with grief. This was a father trying to hold his family together while drowning in debt and unemployment. "Where are your kids now?" "In school. My sister helps watch them when I'm out looking for work or dealing with things like this." He gestured vaguely at the courtroom around them. "They're lucky to have family," the judge said. "But Mr. Moreno, that's a lot for one person to carry. Grief, unemployment, 2 children, and now this." He tapped the tickets again. "I know, Your Honor, I know." Judge Caprio leaned back in his chair, studying the man in front of him. "Let's talk about these specific tickets. You said they were from the hospital district. What were the violations exactly?" David pulled a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket. He'd apparently made notes to prepare for this hearing. "Most of them are expired meters, maybe 20 of those. Then there's about 10 for violating the 2-hour parking limit, a few for street cleaning days, and I think 3 or 4 for parking in a residential permit zone." "Did you feed the meters at all?" "When I could, when I remembered. Your Honor, I'd park the car and go up to see her, and my mind was just somewhere else. Sometimes I'd be there for 4, 5 hours straight. The nurses knew me. They'd let me stay as long as I wanted, and I'd completely forget about the car outside." "What about the street cleaning violations?" A pained expression crossed David's face. "Those were the worst. Because I knew about street cleaning. I've lived in Providence my whole life. I know the signs. But when you're sitting next to someone who's dying and you're trying to make them comfortable, trying to make every minute count," his voice cracked slightly, "street cleaning doesn't seem very important." Judge Caprio nodded. "No, I imagine it wouldn't. The hospital parking lot, the visitor lot, that $15 a day adds up. That's over $100 a week if I went every day. And I did go every day, Your Honor. Sometimes twice. I couldn't afford that lot and still pay for everything else. Food for my kids, her medications that insurance didn't cover, gas to get there. So you took your chances on the street?" "Yes, sir, and I lost. Honors apparently. 37 times." The judge picked up the stack of tickets again, flipping through them more carefully now. Each one represented a small bureaucratic failure. A meter running out, a car staying too long, a street cleaning sign ignored. But together they told the story of someone who'd made a choice. Be with his dying wife or worry about parking. "Mr. Moreno, did you receive these tickets when they were issued?" "Most of them, yes. They'd be on my windshield when I came back to the car." "And what did you do with them?" David's voice grew quieter. "I saw them, Your Honor. I opened them. But I couldn't deal with them. I couldn't think about them. I'd put them in the glove box and tell myself I'd handle it later. After, when things were..." He didn't finish the sentence. But then the bills started adding up. I got a notice from the city in October. That's when I realized how bad it had gotten. All those individual tickets, $35 here, $75 there, they added up to $5,000. And by then there were late fees added on, penalties for non-payment. Judge Caprio set the papers down. Mr. Moreno, let me ask you something directly. In addition to these parking tickets, what other expenses were you facing during those 7 months? The question seemed to break something open. David's carefully maintained composure wavered. Everything, Your Honor. Hospital bills, even with insurance. Co-pays for every doctor visit, every treatment. Her medications. Some of them were hundreds of dollars. Then the funeral costs. I'm still paying off the funeral home. And, he stopped, swallowed hard. And we rented a hospital bed for the house for her final 2 weeks. They let her come home at the very end. That bed, I'm still making payments on that too. And during all of this, you were dealing with parking tickets. They seemed impossible compared to everything else, like the least important thing in the world. Judge Caprio was quiet for a long moment, just looking at the man in front of him. Then he asked the question that would later become the turning point of the hearing, the moment that everyone in the courtroom would remember. Mr. Moreno, if you could say one thing to the city about these fines, one thing to explain why these tickets shouldn't be enforced, what would you say? David didn't answer immediately. He looked down at his hands on the podium, fingers interlaced now, no longer gripping the edge. When he looked back up, his eyes were wet. Your Honor, I was just trying to hold my wife's hand while she died. His voice broke on the last word. The courtroom, already quiet, became utterly still. The clerk stopped writing. The court officer who'd been standing casually by the door straightened up, suddenly paying full attention. In the gallery, someone drew in a sharp breath. I wasn't trying to cheat the city, David continued, his voice thick now. I wasn't trying to avoid responsibility. I was just trying to be there, every minute I could, because I knew, we both knew, that the minutes were running out. And I thought, if I lose the car to a boot, I'll figure it out. If I get more tickets, I'll deal with it later. But if I'm not there when she needs me, if I'm not holding her hand when she's scared, if I'm not there at the end, he stopped, unable to finish. Judge Caprio had removed his glasses again. He set them on the bench, rubbed his eyes with one hand. When he spoke, his voice was gentler than it had been all morning. Mr. Moreno, no one should have to choose between being with their dying spouse and worrying about parking tickets. No one should have to make that calculation. Do I feed the meter or do I stay with her? That's not a choice any human being should face. I made the choice, Your Honor. I stayed with her, every time. Of course you did. You're a good husband. You were a good husband. The judge picked up his pen again, but he didn't write. He just held it, thinking. Tell me about your current situation. You mentioned you're living with your sister. Yes, sir, in Cranston. She's got a 3-bedroom. She gave us her kids' room. They're grown and moved out. My son and daughter share it. I sleep on the couch. And you're actively looking for work? Every day. I check job sites. I've been to 3 different construction companies in the past 2 weeks. It's just tough right now. January, February, not a lot of hiring in construction this time of year. What happens if you get a job? Will you be able to move out, get your own place? That's the plan. But Your Honor, if I have to pay this $5,000, David's voice cracked again. I can't. I literally cannot pay this. Between trying to find a place for me and my kids, trying to pay off the funeral costs, the hospital bed, trying to just buy groceries and school supplies, this would bury me. I'd never get out from under it. So what are you asking the court to do? David looked directly at the judge, a kind of desperate honesty in his face. I'm asking for mercy, Your Honor. I'm asking you to understand that I wasn't being irresponsible. I wasn't being careless. I was being a husband. I was being there for my wife in her last months on earth. And now I'm trying to be a father to 2 kids who just lost their mother. And I need some grace, some understanding, because I can't do this alone. I can't pay this and still take care of my children. The courtroom was absolutely silent. Every word David Moreno had just spoken hung in the air like something physical, something that had weight and presence. Judge Caprio sat back in his chair, looked up at the ceiling for a moment, then back at the defendant. Mr. Moreno, let me tell you what I see when I look at these tickets. The judge spread the stack of parking tickets across his bench like he was laying out cards in a game of solitaire, examining each one individually for a moment. February 14th through September 20th, 7 months, 37 violations. He looked up. But here's what I actually see. I see a man who parked wherever he could find a spot because the hospital parking was too expensive and he needed to save money for medical bills. I see a man who fed meters when he remembered, but whose mind was on more important things, like whether his wife was in pain, whether she needed anything, whether today would be the day. He picked up one ticket, examined it. March 23rd, street cleaning violation. I see a man who probably knew that street cleaning was scheduled, but made a conscious choice that being at his wife's bedside was more important than moving his car. And you know what? He was right. It was more important. David stood absolutely still, listening. These aren't parking violations, Mr. Moreno. This is a man trying to be a husband. This is a man who understood what actually matters in life and made the right choice every single time, even when it cost him money he didn't have. The judge set the tickets down, leaned forward. The law gives me discretion in cases like this. The law understands that sometimes circumstances create situations where rigid enforcement would be unjust. Your Honor, he paused, using the formal term to refer to himself in the third person, the way judges sometimes do, has been doing this for a long time. And I can tell you with absolute certainty that the law must serve justice, not just punishment. Justice means understanding context. It means seeing the human being in front of you, not just the paperwork. He picked up his pen, made a note on the form in front of him. These tickets represent a city that doesn't understand grief. They represent a bureaucracy that can't see beyond its own rules. But this court can. This court does. Judge Caprio looked directly at David Moreno, and his voice was clear and firm. Mr. Moreno, I'm dismissing all of these tickets, every single one, the full $5,000. For a moment, David didn't move. He just stared at the judge as if he hadn't heard correctly, or couldn't process what he'd just heard. I'm sorry, what? I'm dismissing all 37 parking tickets. You don't owe the city anything. All of them. David's voice was barely a whisper. Every single one. $5,000 dismissed. David's hand started trembling on the podium. He brought one hand up to his face, pressed his palm against his forehead. Your Honor, I can't. It's all right. Take your time. Thank you. The words came out choked. Thank you, Your Honor. I don't know what to say. I thought I was going to have to set up a payment plan that would take years. I thought this was going to follow me forever. Judge Caprio shook his head. This isn't going to follow you. What's going to follow you is the memory of your wife and the responsibility of raising those 2 children. That's enough. You don't need this burden too. David nodded, unable to speak for a moment. He wiped at his eyes with the back of his hand, not caring who saw. In the gallery, someone quietly handed a tissue forward, passing it along the row until it reached David's sister, who'd been sitting in silent support. She dabbed at her own eyes. Mr. Moreno, the judge continued, his voice still gentle, I'm sorry for what you went through. I'm sorry you had to make those impossible choices. I'm sorry the system couldn't see what was really happening and gave you these tickets in the first place. But I want you to know something. You did the right thing. Every single time, you did exactly the right thing. You were there for her. That's what matters. She knew I was there. Even at the end, she knew. That's everything. That's what marriage means. That's what love means. David took a shaky breath, trying to compose himself. Your Honor, I want you to know what this means. It's not just the money. It's knowing that someone understands, that someone sees what I was trying to do. I've been carrying this guilt, thinking I was irresponsible, thinking I messed up by not dealing with these tickets right away. And now you know you did exactly what you should have done. You prioritized what mattered most. Your wife needed you there, and you were there. That's not irresponsibility. That's love. I keep thinking about those last few weeks, David said, the words tumbling out now, as if the judge's compassion had opened a floodgate. When she came home for hospice care, we had that hospital bed in the living room. My kids would come home from school and do their homework next to her bed. We'd eat dinner there, all of us together, even though she couldn't eat anymore. And I'd think, this is it. This is the last time we're all together like this. Judge Caprio nodded slowly. How are your children handling it? They're kids. Some days they're okay. Some days my daughter cries at random times. My son has nightmares. We're all in counseling. My sister helped find a family therapist who works with kids who've lost parents. That's good. That's important. They ask about her all the time. They want to tell me stories about things they remember. And I listen, even when it hurts. Because I want them to remember her. I want them to know it's okay to miss her. The judge's expression was soft, almost fatherly. You're doing the right things, Mr. Moreno. You're being the father they need. And I want you to focus on that. Don't let anything else distract you. Not debt, not worry about money, not guilt over parking tickets. Your job right now is to take care of those two children and take care of yourself. That's it. Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. I will. Judge Caprio glanced at the clerk, who was already processing the dismissal paperwork. Before you go, Mr. Moreno, is there anything else you need from this court? Anything we can help you with? David shook his head, still overwhelmed. No, Your Honor. You've already done more than I could have hoped for. Well, let me mention something. The clerk's office has information about various assistance programs, job placement services, grief counseling resources, programs for families in transition. I don't know what you might qualify for, but it wouldn't hurt to ask. They're good people down there. They can point you in the right direction. I'll do that, thank you. And Mr. Moreno, when you do find a job, and you will find one, and when you do get back on your feet, and you will, I want you to remember this moment. Not because I did something special, but because this is what communities should do for each other. We should understand. We should help. We should see each other as human beings, not just case numbers. David's voice was thick with emotion again. Your Honor, you have no idea what this means to me, to my family. This morning I woke up thinking about how I was going to explain another financial burden to my sister, how I was going to figure out a payment plan that I couldn't afford. And now, he trailed off, shaking his head in disbelief. Now you can focus on what matters. Your children, your future, finding a job, building a life. That's what I want for you. God bless you, Your Honor. Judge Caprio smiled, a warm, genuine smile that transformed his judicial bearing into something entirely human. Go be with your children, Mr. Moreno. They need their father, and you need them. Take care of each other. We will, sir. I promise. We will. The judge made the final notation on his paperwork, signed it with a flourish. This case is dismissed. Good luck to you. David Moreno stepped back from the podium, and for a moment he just stood there in the center of Providence Municipal Court, as if he couldn't quite believe it was over. His sister stood up in the gallery, her face wet with tears, and he turned toward her. They didn't embrace, not yet, not in the formal courtroom, but they shared a look that needed no words. As David walked toward the courtroom doors, he paused. He turned back toward the bench where Judge Caprio was already looking down at the next case file, preparing to call the next defendant, returned to the routine business of municipal court. David raised one hand in a small wave, a gesture of gratitude that encompassed everything he couldn't say. Judge Caprio looked up, caught the gesture, and nodded once. A simple nod. Fatherly. Understanding. The nod of one human being acknowledging another's pain and offering what grace he could. Then David was gone, through the courtroom doors, back into his life with two children who needed him, back into the hard work of rebuilding and healing and remembering. Behind him, the clerk was already calling the next case number. The rhythm of the court continued. Someone else stepped up to the podium. Someone else had a story, had a context, had a human reason for standing there. Judge Caprio picked up the next file, but before he looked at it, he glanced at the empty podium where David Moreno had stood just moments before. The stack of 37 parking tickets sat on the corner of his bench, stamped with red ink. Dismissed. They'd be filed away, archived, eventually forgotten by everyone except the man whose life they'd briefly threatened to crush. In Providence Municipal Court, justice sometimes looked like mercy. Sometimes it looked like understanding. Sometimes it looked like a judge who took the time to ask questions and really listen to the answers. The law had room for discretion. It had room for compassion. It had room for humanity. Sometimes that was enough.